Light the candle, Tiger!
Hello there, and a very warm welcome to this week's Racing Post Golf Postcast. I'm Dave Clark of the Racing Post, and on the punter's bag this week is the champ, Joe Champion from Racing Post Sports Desk. How are you, Joe?
Good, Clarky, you?
You're not bad. How's your form?
Not too bad. I'm back to Haotong Lee each way last week. That was about it for me. But yeah, plenty more to get stuck into this week, though, I think.
Excellent. Well, you weren't alone in back in Lee. Obviously, Steve Palmer, who's not with us. Best wishes to Steve and all his family, their impending arrival any day now, which is why he's not with us. But Steve bagged an each-way double last week. Ricky Fowler and Lee, as Joe mentioned, paid about 10-1. So hopefully a few of you out there followed that in. Right, Joe. Well, what happened last week? Let's start with Wells Fargo.
Yeah, Max Homa at a massive price. He, he's been kind of just missed a lot of cuts at the start of the season, but just kind of finding his form. And he's a player who has struggled in the past, but he's just hitting his stride. He finished in the sort of top 20s here and there, and despite missing a cut the week before, he's roared back with a great putting display to win the Wells Fargo. There were guys up there in the top of the leaderboard. You mentioned Ricky Fowler, of course, Rory Sabbatini with another bad Sunday finish as well. Max Homa held them all at bay and
would have been a skin over. Would have been a big price. I was looking back and he's missed 15 of his 17 cuts so far this year. So if you found him, it was a good find.
Yeah, very much so. I put him up as a bit of after timing, a top 40 at the Genesis a few weeks ago, and he scraped in there at about 8-1, I think. And but I didn't think he was ready to win a tournament yet. But fair play to him. He really did. He really held it together really well.
I was on fire.
Very much so.
And a quick mention on other players. Obviously, FedEx Cup winner Justin Rose bounced back to form. He finished a sole third.
Yeah, Justin Rose played well. I mean, he had a dreadful Masters, didn't he? Missing the cut at Augusta, and he didn't have a clue where his game was at a few weeks ago. But back in the groove now, and just in time for the USPGA next week as well.
Indeed. And two other notables that I sort of dug out were Jason Duffner and Sergio Garcia, both showing up well. Yeah,
Sergio, his putter was red hot, which has not always been the case for him, and good to see the Duff back on the.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, of course, USPGA next week. He's a former winner, of course, but I'm not even sure if he's in the field for that yet. But he's missed plenty of cuts in a row. But he's a class act when he can get it all together.
Okay, and let's move to the China Open, and that was won by Mikko Kohonen, second European Tour title for him.
Yeah, he's kind of been a journeyman, Kohonen, but he's been knocking on the door here and there. His 10th a couple of weeks ago in the Indian Open, I think, and he's always had that in him. He can shoot low rounds. He likes a track where you can go low. And another one for Finnish golf. They've got a few decent players now in Finland. Mikko Ilinen was kind of the trailblazer for the Finns, but he's retired now. But Kohonen's there, and they've got Tapio Pulkkinen, who's one of Wilco's fancies this week. We should mention Wilco's fancies. And also Kim Koivu, who won a lot on the Challenge Tour last year. He's one to watch out for as well, even if he's gone off the boil a little recently.
They might be strong in the Olympics, the Finns.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, it could be ones to look at.
Usually known for the Winter Games, of course.
That's it, yeah, exactly. Right, let's move on then to this week, Joe. We'll go to the European Tour first. The Betfred British Masters at Hillside Golf Club in Southport. I mentioned about the sponsors as well before we kick off. Betfred, 10 places.
Yeah, 10 places from Betfred. Great work from them, really. And, to be fair to them, they haven't been slashing the prices like firms sometimes tend to do when they do go 10 places. So, they've obviously, this event was almost in doubt at the start of the season. It wasn't on the schedule when Sky Sports had the sponsorship and they pulled out. But, Betfred, fair play. They've taken it up for a couple of years and, it's an enjoyable event. It's suffering a bit being so close to the major next week, but still it should be a good test for those who have turned up in Southport this week.
Yeah, been in the UK, obviously bet by 7 a.m. on Thursday. As you mentioned, Joe, USPGA next week. It looks as if it's had a big impact on the field.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's not that much of a surprise. If you look, we'll talk about the Byron Nelson later. There's a few European golfers who are turning up there who might well have been playing in this event instead. But, it's a bit of an ask to go straight over to Bethpage next week. And, will that hit Tommy Fleetwood's preparation? And there's a few other guys who might fancy their chances of doing well. But, yeah, it definitely has suffered to a degree.
Right, let's talk track then. What do we know about the course?
Well, it's a classic links test. It's right adjacent to Royal Birkdale, the scene of Jordan Spieth's Open triumph a couple of years ago, where he was all over the course and moving cars out the way to take shots and stuff
So
like
they'll
that.
be plenty familiar with the course then, obviously.
Well, it's not been played on the European Tour for a long time now. I think it was sort of 30 odd years ago that they played there, but the players will be aware of it, and a few of the lesser lights have played it because it was open qualifying has been staged there, I think, from 2014 to 2017. They've also had a senior major there. Not that any of these guys would have turned up in that, but it is known to the players. And as I said, a classic links test. There are trees there, which is not in keeping with links golf as such, but it's going to play to the strengths of players who know how to handle links golf. And I don't think the wind's going to be too bad in Southport this week. So, we could see some lower scores than maybe predicted if the winds do get up.
I think Saturday is the windy day.
I think you're right.
So that could be where the drama is, as it ever is on moving day. So as a links course, a little bit more forgivable off the tee?
Yeah, very much so. You can't go too wide on this course, but talking about forgivable off the tee, we'll talk about the American course later, and that's massively wide fairways.
No
it's not
trees
going to
at
be
all there,
that easy, but I'd like to think that anyone who has a links game should be able to cope with this test, and I've got a few selections that I think will go well.
Brilliant. Well, before we get them, we always like to talk about past winners, and the defending champion lines up. Is he a runner?
Eddie Pepperell, yeah, definitely. He's one of these players who's played well in links golf before, and as you mentioned, the field is perhaps not as strong as it might have been, so it's no surprise to see that there's a few people, including Wilco, who've put up Eddie Pepperell this week. I think that he's opposable at the prices, but
not often he'd be third in the betting.
Yeah, that's quite right,
story, doesn't it?
And if you look at the top of the market, we've got Tommy Fleetwood, the host. He's perfectly deserving of his single-figure price. He knows the track well, and he's the class act in the field, and probably out of the list, the most likely to contend next week in the majors. Tyrrell Hatton has been out of form all season, really. I couldn't have him at the prices, but yeah, Pepperell definitely deserving of his place in the market.
Right, so you've mentioned the top three in the betting there, Joe, and you're not with any of them, so who are we with?
My top tip is Joost Luiten, who's the Dutchman who's been out with injury for a while, and he's come back well, and he's finished in the top 5 in the top 25, in 5 of his 6 European Tour events this season. And that includes 3rd in Abu Dhabi, 6th in Saudi Arabia, 10th in the co-sanctioned WGC Mexico, which is obviously great form with all the PGA Tour big guns in it as well. 12th in the 25th in Morocco, and his last title came in the Oman Open in 2018, and that was following his injuries. He's come back and he's won that, and that's significant because Al Mouj Golf Club in Oman is a links style track. It's this sort of test is something that he can definitely handle, and he's also a winner in the he's a 2-time winner of the KLM Open. One of those was at the Dutch, and that's a track where it's an inland links. It was designed by Colin Montgomery, and he's not always performed that well in the UK, but he's won the Welsh Open before, so he's not completely averse to playing in these sorts of conditions.
Tidy player, isn't he?
He is, yeah, and he's a real class act around the greens. He's one of the prolific winners in the field, and he deserves to be the price that he is, really. And I think getting 10 places as well, I just think he's such a solid option in this, in a field that's probably not as strong as it might have been.
Well, he's the top tip. He's around about a 25-1 chance. Who else do you like?
I like Tom Lewis, who's a guy who, he won the Portugal Masters in 2011, and then he went completely off the radar. His game went to pieces, and then he's just sparked into life last year. And 7 years on from that Portugal triumph, he won again in Portugal. And this is a player who's contended in the Open Championships briefly. He was the low amateur in the Open in a few years ago now, and he's finished 3rd in the Dunhill Links in 2013 as well. 5th in this tournament last year as well at Walton Heath when Justin Rose was the host. So, he finally hit form and he's carried it on really. He won that Challenge Tour event at Luton Hoo before the Portugal Masters, And he finished tied 21 in Morocco last time out, where he ranked second for greens hit in regulation as well, which is going to be a key stat round here. So, Tom Lewis, he knows the track as well, because he has played open qualifying several times at Hillside. Never actually made it through, but came very close on a couple of occasions. So he's clearly not adverse to the conditions.
Okay, well, it's not all going to be one-way traffic. I'm going to put one up as well. Ian Wilkinson covered the preview of this tournament in the Racing Post, and Joe obviously done the Byron Nelson. I felt he put up a great case for Andy Sullivan, around about a 33 to 1 chance. Last 10 efforts on the European soil, if you can ignore the Open: 9th, 10th, missed cut, 6th, 21st, 9th, 5th, 31st, 3rd, and 21st. So surely going to be there or thereabouts. 10 places, each way job.
Yeah, I like Andy Sullivan in this. He's not one of my selections, but he certainly would be near enough the short list. It's just the only worry for me is that he hasn't won for a long time, but then he's such a good player when he's in the mood. So wouldn't surprise me at all, to be honest, Dave.
Right, who else should I like then, Joe? You've given us 2 so far. Any more?
Yeah, another one I like. I mentioned Joost Loughton's injury problems. Another one I like here is Bernd Wiesberger, who's Austrian powerhouse. He's played just 7 tournaments last season and then was out for 7 months before his return in Mauritius in December. He took a few weeks off, and as many of the European Tour players have done, because there wasn't much going on over the last few weeks. And he came back with a tie for 14th for the China Open, and that's a performance that he should be ready to build on. He finished second at the 2016 British Masters at the Grove, and whilst that wasn't a links test, this one is, and he's got great links form. His last 4 Dunhill appearances, he came 12th, 14th, 4th and 7th, finished second.
For a bomber.
Yeah, very much so.
He is.
Yeah, that's what he can do though. He's not just an out-and-out bomber. He's got plenty from tee to green. So his second shots will prove important around here. He finished second in the Irish Open at Royal County Down as well. And he won the French Open, Le Golf National, where the Ryder Cup was staged last year. That's quite linksy as well. It's very exposed, and that's the sort of test that can correlate well with Hillside. So yeah, I like Wiesberger, and the other one I like is Clement Sordet at a big price, 125 to 1, I think, 10 places. He's a young Frenchman who's been knocking on the door a lot recently. He's been threatening a breakthrough, and he finished 14th in Morocco recently on a track where he's missed 2 cuts before that. So you can see his improvement right there. I've mentioned Al Mouj Golf as well in Oman. He tied second there in March, and he finished top 10 at the Vic Open in Australia, 13th Beach in Geelong, which is another links-style Australian golf course. 28th in his only start in the Alfred Dunhill as well, and tied 16th in this event at Warren Heath last year. So, yeah, Clement Sordet completes my 4.
Brilliant. Excellent stuff from Joe there. Shall we move on then? A little bit more familiar territory, because obviously you covered the Byron Nelson in this week's Racing Post. We go to Texas. We're at the Trinity Forest Golf Club. It's called Trinity Forest, but there are no trees, Joe.
Yeah,
I think that one to me first.
There's plenty around the outside, but there's none in the centre, which makes this quite an exposed golf course. It's almost linksy in its feel as well. It's Core and Crenshaw designed track, which they've designed other courses like Kapalua and Pinehurst as well. They redesigned where the US Open was held in 2014, and it's going to be an interesting test because the fairways are incredibly wide, but it's all about where you hit the ball on these fairways. It will help players, Jordan Spieth being one, I think, who's he's not a tip for me just because I can't have him at the moment, but I don't think he's that far away, and he's going to be able to find fairways fairly regularly. I think Aaron Wise won last year, and he hit 90 plus fairways, and green in regulation stats were through the roof as well, and then it just becomes more about where you place the ball on these greens and on the fairways. This is
one you need to plot your way around.
Well, very much so, yeah. But it's a course that can favour people that can hit it a long way because they're not going to miss it into the rough. So, it's going to play long as well this week. There's been quite a lot of rain in Dallas in the build-up, so I've got a few guys who can hit it a long way who I think will be in the mix this week. Well,
let's talk about last year then, because obviously this is only the second year that this is the venue of this tournament. You mentioned Aaron Wise being the winner. What have we learnt from last year? Anything coming into this?
Well, as I say, you can, it's all about, you need to rank highly in greens hit in regulation really, because Wise and Mark Leishman, who were the top 2 last year, they were both in the sort of top end of those sort of stats. You know, it's not going to be a putting contest this week, but it's all about where you put the ball in proximity to the holes. And that's the thing we really learnt from this last year. But you know, it's a great track. It's not like many other PGA Tour tracks in that, you know, you can miss the fairways and you get away with it. You're not going to miss the fairways this week, but it's very much a second shot golf course in that regard.
You do well to miss the putting surface that the 3rd and the 11th join, which is the largest in America, by all accounts.
Yeah, I'd probably miss it anyway, Dave, but hopefully these guys won't. Yeah.
Right, so let's obviously bet by 1 p.m. on Thursday. We're in Texas, and you've mentioned Leishman. Anyone who's read the Racing Post today, that's your main selection this week, Joe?
Yeah, Mark Leishman, I really like this week. The one thing that might put people off is that he hasn't been in great form, but he's that sort of player who can turn up, and if it's a track he likes, he can just turn it round without really warning. He doesn't need to come into form to win. You know, he was in form at the start of the season. He won the Sim Classic in October at TPC Kuala Lumpur, and you know, after that he played really well, finishing in the top 4 in 4 of his next 6 events. As I say, his form tailed off, but he rocked up in Texas at the WGC Match Play, and he made the knockout stages. And as I said, second last year behind Wise. Opened with a 61. That's a way to start a course record, isn't it? 61. And you know, he loves this track really. He was apprehensive at first about the move to because it was played at TPC 4 Seasons in La Colina, and now they've moved to Trinity last year, and he'd always had great form at TPC 4 Seasons, so he wasn't too happy initially, but he turned up and he loved it. He said the course, which is undulating and, as I said, quite linksy in its feel, is you know, it reminded him of the courses that he grew up playing on Melbourne's Mornington Peninsula, you know. And Aaron Wise said the same thing. He said it was most like a track that he's played in Melbourne rather than something he played on the PGA Tour.
Get the Aussies on side.
Yeah, Adam Scott as well. He also backed up that claim. He's not playing this week, but he's one of a number of Aussies who might love it this week. I mean, and he's always played well at Trinity. 4 Seasons anyway. You know, he's finished 13th or better in 6 of his 9 appearances, and then, you know, finishing second last year is a great pointer. And he's also a frequent winner on the tour. He's won on Bermuda grass greens in the Sim Classic and the Arnold Palmer at Bay Hill. So, you know, he's going to like the putting surfaces this week as well.
Brilliant. He's top price 33-1 chance is Mark Leishman. Let's move through a few at the head of the betting then. I'm going to put up Matsuyama. I know it's one that you're not keen on, Joe, but 16th last year, and we mentioned sort of how forgiving the fairways are. He's down 133rd in driving accuracy, only 58%, but this would be the sort of track I thought we might be able to get away with it.
Well, as I've said, it's a second shot course really, and Matsuyama, he'll be able to get away with it around here. And you know, there are a few players better with their irons than Hideki is, but you know, I haven't seen enough from him to recommend backing him at that price, to be honest. And the putter's not behaved all year really either, so you know, certainly in with a chance in this field, which due to the US PGA next week is not, you know, it's not a high quality field really for a PGA Tour.
What about your thoughts on Brooks Koepka?
Brooks Koepka, I'm quite happy to take him on this week. We know how good he is, but he's just a major monster, isn't he? Like,
tuning up for next week.
You know, we saw at the Masters how close he came to winning there. This is a guy who will be desperate to defend his title next week as well. And you know, I just think you can let him go at the prices, to be honest, because he's only won a couple of non-major events, so he clearly just wants to win the big ones.
He's generally a 7-1 chance. Heading the betting is Brooks Koepka. Let's move down a little bit. We mentioned Matsuyama, Spieth, Wise. Henrik Stenson. What about him, Joe?
Yeah, Henrik Stenson could go well this week. It's a sort of place where, you know, his elite iron play will be to the fore. He's just coming into a bit of form as well. So, yeah, Stenson definitely a runner this week, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him on the leaderboard. I just don't think he's been winning enough recently to recommend him. But yeah, you know, we've seen he's an Open champion, so he'll like this kind of linksy test. And yeah, Stenson definitely a runner.
He's another one I liked. But what about yourself then? Who joins Leishman on the champs team this week?
I'm going for a recent PGA Tour winner, and that's Keith Mitchell, who won the Honda Classic, again on Bermuda grass greens like these, and he really showed his mettle that weekend. He held off the challenge of Brooks Koepka and Ricky Fowler. I mean, when you've got those two guys, and they were charging at him as well. There was birdies galore, and Mitchell held firm. And you know, you're not going to get 200 to 1 this week about him like he did at the Honda, but there's a reason for that. He's backed it up recently. He came 6th at Bay Hill, and then, you know, finished in the top 50 at the Players, which is fair enough in the toughest field in golf, really. And then again on his Masters debut at Augusta, you know, he missed the Heritage Cup, but you know that's not a track that's not gonna suit him down to the ground. And then came back to form with top 10 at the Wells Fargo. He loves playing in Texas as well. He's finished 6th in Houston last year, 26th for the Valero, and 3rd in this tournament. And obviously it was his first look at the course, as was the case for everyone. Yep. He's ranked high in straight gained approaching this year, which is going to be a key stat round here. So I expect him to go well. And yeah, I've got a couple of others as well.
Yeah, he's about 33 to 1 chance, is Mitchell. Who else do we like?
I like another informed player, one of the most informed golfers around at the moment. It's Rory Sabbatini. We've already mentioned the Olympics. He's switched his allegiance from South Africa to Slovakia. Apparently he's desperate to grow the game in Slovakia, but
he just wants to sniff out.
I think there's an ulterior motive there, don't you? Sabatini, his last 8 starts, they read brilliantly, really. 36th for the Honda, 35th for the Players, 18th for the Valspar, 39th for the Corrales, probably the worst of the lot considering it was the worst field, but 36th in Texas, 10th for the Heritage, 3rd at the Zurich alongside Brian Gay in the team event, and then 18th most recently at the Wells Fargo. The Wells Fargo run was quite eye-catching as well, really, because he shot 76 in the opening round at Quail, which was the worst round of anyone, I think, in the top 50 when the tournament finished. And to finish 18th on the back of it is a really good recovery. And, you know, he's a 2009 Byron Nelson winner at 4 seasons, so he obviously likes playing in the state, and finished 13th last season on the new track. So, yeah, Rory Sabbatini is a really informed man at the moment, so quite happy to get with him. And one more for you as well.
Go on.
Lucas Bjergaard, who's...
or as Palmer calls him, Bjergaard.
Yeah, Bjergaard.
Yeah.
Lucas Bjergaard is... he's opted to play this week. As I said, there's a few players in the field who are playing in the Byron Nelson instead of the British Masters.
So he could have easily been lining up in...
Yeah, I mean, he could have gone out in Southport and he'd have been among the favourites there. And... you know, he's there. I think Luke Donald as well this week is one of them. There's Podrick Harrington as well. There's all these guys who have opted to come and play this track instead. And Bjergaard probably the best of the lot, alongside maybe Thomas Peters, who hasn't been in great form. But yeah, he's improved massively over the last year or so. And you know, finished 12th on the Bermuda at the Honda in what was sort of his standard PGA Tour event debut, really. And then 30th at the Players, as I mentioned, incredibly tough field, and he's not going to get anything like that sort of competition this time around. You know, we've got some top players at the top of the market, but then there's quite a lot left in the list who aren't quite up to that standard. Missed the cut at the Valero, which is, you know, a bit of a concern, but you know, he's played in the WGC match play in Austin, and he beat Justin Thomas, Matt Wallace, Henrik Stenson, and Tiger Woods, which is some resume, really, especially considering what Tiger Woods has gone on to achieve since. And reached the semi-finals before he was narrowly beaten by Matt Kuchar. He hits the ball an absolute mile off the tee. I think he's ranking about 12th in driving distance on the PGA Tour this season in his fleeting appearances. So he's going to absolutely love the chance to attack these fairways. And he's a player who I really like, and I think, you know, he could go to the next step. He has the potential to do that. I know, you know, there's quite a lot of people that regard him as a top European player in the making. So, yeah, Lucas Bjergaard, the last one for my team. So
we're going for a couple of form horses at big prices for yourself, Joe. That's what we're looking for this week. Yep. Right, let's round up then. British Masters, top tip is?
Is Joost Luiten.
Joost Luiten, yep. Dutch player there. And in the AT&T Byron Nelson, we're going for?
Mark Leishman.
I like Ryan Palmer as well in that AT&T. Right, that about wraps it up. Do check out the feed, the RP TV feed, because we've got the final Racing Post football Postcast of the season. Obviously going down to that final game. Plenty of racing podcasts as well. I thank you, Joe, for your time and expertise. I'm sure we'll be amongst the winners this week. Thank you for watching and listening.
Give him the horn!